Let me finish tonight with this horrible talk we're hearing in this country. I was out last night in California, in Los Angeles, with a large group of former Peace Corps volunteers like me. We were at UCLA talking about the Corps' 50-year anniversary this week, ever since John F. Kennedy decided it was a good idea to get young Americans out there in the world helping countries develop, sharing some of our American can-do spirit, and in the process learning something about how the rest of the world looks at things. It came to me that everything good about that is being assaulted these days. This guy Huckabee and Gingrich and W before him were out there trashing the whole idea of learning anything from about the world, anything from the rest of the world. This whole stupidization of things that began with Bush's inane attempt to rename French fries. Now this guy Huckabee's going around the right-wing radio world singing the song that our president isn't really one of us because his father, who stayed with him until the age of 2, infected him with some kind of foreignness. You know, he's a Kenyan. He's a secret Muslim. He's from over there where those African people are, those different people live. I thought we were beyond this Yahoo talk, this fear of the world, this monkey trial nonsense. But we're not, are we? We've got knuckleheads promenading around the right-wing radio belt, playing to the God-knows-who crowd, saying how Obama was somehow involved with the Mau Maus, hanging around madrasa schools. All the while, there's this young kid way back then trying to make it in this country. And all he did, everything he did was right as a regular American kid playing basketball on a championship team in Hawaii. That's what I wanted to do growing up, be a championship basketball player. He went to Catholic school like I did. He got into Occidental College out in California, then to Columbia University. Then he went to the Ivy League and went to Harvard Law where he made the law review. What more do you want this kid to do? He's done everything right. Look at his marriage. Michelle's done everything right. Her brother's a top basketball coach out at Oregon State. The kids look like they're right out of a picture book. This isn't just frickin' the American dream. It's darn near perfect. And what is this right-wing goon squad doing? They keep talking about his father, his grandfather. What about his grandfather who fought under Patton in World War II? What are these people looking for? Some evidence that he's black? Is that it? They ought to be ashamed of themselves. You know what? Want to know what's un-American? Huckabee and Newton, the rest of them. This stuff is. That's Hardball for now. Thanks for being with us. More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We've got a great show ahead for you guys tonight. We're going to tell you tonight about how the Republicans are going to run against President Obama. And it can be summed up pretty easily. They're going dirty. Exhibit A is former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who has apparently sunk to new lows. It all started when Huckabee had this to say about President Obama in a radio interview.
Don't you think we deserve to know more about this man?
I would love to know more, but what I know is troubling enough. And one thing that I do know is his having grown up in Kenya. His view of the Brits, for example, very different than the average American.
All right, how many times do we have to go through this? He did not grow up in Kenya. Now, when he said that, I actually was a little skeptical that he meant it on purpose. Richard Wolff was on the program yesterday. He said, of course he did. It's politics. He's appealing to his base. It turns out Richard Wolff was totally right, and my skepticism was not warranted. Yes, it's definitely about that. Because if you just look at that, you might say, look, it could be an honest mistake. He said Kenya, he meant something else, and then he's going to come on and try to clarify. And when he does, you're going to see his real intention. Look, last night, he went on the O'Reilly factor. Now, this is supposed to explain away his comments, but instead, look at how he doubled down.
My point really even about talking about him being raised in a different country, actually Indonesia, not Kenya, as I do understand. The point that I do want to make is that creates a different worldview. This is not a kid who grew up, going to Boy Scout meetings and playing Little League baseball.
What does that mean? He didn't grow up playing baseball and going to Boy Scout meetings. First of all, how do you know he didn't play baseball? You don't know anything about who he was playing. Maybe he played kickball. How do you know? And what Huckabee is saying is he's another. He's not one of us. He's foreign, whether it's Kenya or Indonesia, whatever it is. Don't trust him. He's not one of us real Americans. It's coming through so clearly. But in case you weren't clear enough on it, he also went on right-wing talker Brian Fisher's radio show, and it was the same exact theme.
You seem to think there's some validity to the fact that there may be some fundamental anti-Americanism in this president.
Well, and that's exactly the point that I make in the book.
That's exactly the point you make in your book? That our president is anti-American? How many times are they going to go to this well? And how ugly are they going to get? And how dirty are they going to get? Now, look, all that is bad. His intentions are clear. but the last part makes it 100% clear. Listen for the end here as he talks about what turns out to be his true intention.
I have said many times publicly that I do think he has a different worldview, and I think it's in part molded out of a very different experience. Most of us grew up going to Boy Scout meetings, and our communities were filled with Rotary clubs, not madrasas.
First of all, Indonesia and Kenya have had Rotary clubs since about 1930. Okay, but the relevant part is the madrasa. You're going to bring back the madrasa? How many times do we have to debunk this? And you think Huckabee doesn't know? Of course he knows Obama didn't go to a madrasa. He didn't grow up around a madrasa. He knows it 100% for a fact. So why is he doing it? Because he wants to play the race card. He wants to play the other card. He wants to bring the ethnicity into it. He wants to bring the religion into it. He wants to trick his base into thinking this guy is a Muslim. He went to a madrasa. And look, honestly, it's not just the Muslim part. He's also dealing the race card, and he's dealing from the bottom of the deck. But look, he's not alone. They're all doing it. There's a theme that many of the people thinking of running against President Obama are all working on. Newt Gingrich, shameless about playing the Kenya card in a National Review interview last week. He said, quote, "What if Obama is so outside of our comprehension that only if you understand Kenyan anti-colonial behavior can you begin to piece together his actions? That is the most accurate, predictive model for his behavior." Really? The Kenyan anti-colonial model is the most accurate for predicting how a president is going to act when he grew up in Hawaii? It's so transparent. And who got this ball rolling? Of course, it was Sarah Palin back in 2008. She got it all rolling with this, Obama isn't like one of us. Watch.
This is not a man who sees America as you and I see America. We see America as a force for good in this world. Our opponent is someone who sees America as imperfect enough to pal around with terrorists who targeted their own country.
How clear do they have to make it? Pal around with terrorists, grew up around madrasas. His father is Kenyan. You know where Kenya is? It's in Africa. Come on, man. And more recently, Michelle Bachmann made the ultimate goal very, very clear as well.
This is not symbolic. This is why we were sent here, and we will not stop until we repeal a president.
Repeal a president, defeat a president. Newt mentioned recently, impeach the president. So the overall objective is clear. Tear this president down by any means necessary. All right, joining me now is Bob Shrum, Democratic strategist and NYU professor, who worked on both the Gore and Kerry presidential campaigns, so he knows a thing or two about dirty campaigns that were run against his guys. And Jonathan Alter, MSNBC political analyst and Newsweek's national affairs columnist. All right, Bob, let me start with you. Look, you know, you were on Kerry's campaign. They ran the Swift boat veterans against you guys. Is this part and parcel of Republican strategy? First thing you do, we got a campaign going on, go dirty, go ugly, go as low as you can.
Yeah, listen, I've written extensively about the Swift boats and why I believe that we should have responded immediately. I think this is actually a different case. I think they're appealing here, and Huckabee is appealing here, to the base of the Republican Party. They're competing for the nomination. They want to get the birthers. They want to get the extreme Tea Party people who believe that Obama is the other. So that's the kind of politics that's being played here, and it's being played all across the board. It's even being played in a somewhat milder form by Mitt Romney. So that's the game that's going on. But I'll tell you, when I hear Huckabee, it strikes me as disgusting and hypocritical. He talks about growing up in an America of Boy Scouts and Rotary clubs. You know, the part of America he grew up in tolerated and defended intolerance and racial segregation. To me, that's not the real America, and he doesn't have any right to accuse this president of anti-Americanism.
You know, now that we're talking about Rotary Club, I just got to step in and say one thing here. My dad was in a Rotary Club. He was in a Rotary Club in Istanbul before we moved here. And then part of the reason that he moved here was because the Rotary Club was so welcoming and accepting. And he thought, what a wonderful country. And then he joined the Rotary Club here. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, Jonathan, look, before there was a question, now there's no question, it seems. He's doing this on purpose. But he's got that folksy thing Huckabee does, you know, like, oh, I'm with the people, etc. Is he hurting that brand by doing this, or is that part and parcel of it?
I actually think he is hurting that brand. You know, Huckabee got a reputation for being a decent guy in the 2008 campaign. Reporters tended to like him. He made some smart speeches, said some interesting things, and he is putting that all at risk. It reminds me of a line from the O.J. trial when one of his friends was on the stand, and he just at a certain point he said, "This is sad, O.J." You know, there's just something that's kind of pathetic about this. He does. First of all, it's not even clear that Huckabee is running for president. I mean, my sources tell me that he's not running because in order to meet his mortgage payments on his new house in Florida, he needs that Fox contract. And that if he was running, that Roger Ailes would have made him do the same thing that Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum did, you know, go off the payroll. So that's what's confusing about this to me. He knows this is all untrue. It comes from Dinesh D'Souza's book, this whole anti-colonial rap, which Newt Gingrich thinks is brilliant, and I guess Huckabee now thinks is brilliant, but it's actually just the most kind of fallacious nonsense that you can imagine. So he knows it's not true. He's probably not running for president. So why is he doing this?
That's a good question. But, Bob, you know, if he's running for president, he does have to appeal to his base. And his base, according to the polls, believes this nonsense, right? So is he stuck between a rock and a hard place? Do all the Republicans have to go dirty like this in order to appeal to the primary voters?
I think you're seeing a wholesale movement in the Republican Party as far to the right to appeal to these Tea Party types as possible. Look, this is a party that nominated last year in Delaware a Senate candidate who had to deny she was a witch before she went down in flames. This party is pushed to the right. I think it's having a very difficult time, a lot of these folks who vote in the primaries, dealing with the fact that an African American is president of the United States. What do they mean when they say they want to take our country back? Back from whom? Michelle Bachmann was pretty clear, back from Barack Obama. I don't know whether Huckabee's running for president, and I think he's a little quixotic, so he may have to make those mortgage payments, but a few months from now he may decide to run. But he's certainly going to keep the option open.
You know, John, let me go to that. Look, part of how they pay the mortgage, and it's certainly true of Gingrich, but it's also true of Huckabee now, is, look, they're rock stars, right? So they make huge amounts of money for speeches, books, etc. How do they do that? By keep running for president. Put yourself in a high profile. Look at Huckabee is at the top of the poll. Recent poll put him at 25%. He's leading. And if you're leading, you're almost crazy not to run.
So he and Palin are keeping their options open to a certain extent. And they're going to, instead of doing the early exploratory committee where they go out and raise money early on, they think they're going to kind of surf in on the, you know, the Fox wave or something. But there is a small part of the Republican Party that is not going in this direction. I agreed with everything you said earlier, Chink, except that this applies to all of them. So you do have people like Mitch Daniels.
Mitch Daniels?
You know, Mitch Daniels isn't going down this road. So I think that one of the things that reasonable people can do, oh yeah, there's a wing of the Republican Party that really wants him to get in this race. So one of the things that reasonable people can do is do what we're doing here and, you know, denounce this as just completely out of bounds and you know, say to independents and others who do respond to pollsters, look at some of the others. If you're going to vote Republican, at least look at the people who aren't engaging in this kind of trash.
You know, look, and Mitch Daniels, he also took away collective bargaining rights. Now, that's more policy, and I got that. He did it back in 2005. But, you know, the guy who won in 2008 in the primary was John McCain, the so-called moderate, but, you know, he was not as far right. So I'm not sure the strategy that they're employing makes sense. But Bob, when you go into the general election, and you've dealt with this several times, they're going to do these bag of tricks. They did it against your candidates. So now how do you fight back when Democrats aren't willing to do the same thing? I mean, it's not like Obama's going to come out and say Huckabee is un-American or whoever else, right? So how do you effectively fight back?
Well, first, let me say, by the way, that I think the Mitch Daniels wing of the Republican Party is broken and isn't going to get anywhere. He's committed the sin, the cardinal sin, for example, of saying we ought to have an adult conversation about taxes. Secondly, I think that this is going to hurt Republican candidates in the general election. I think right now you have a whole sense that these folks are unserious. That's why Bill Kristol, Laura Ingraham, a number of Republican commentators are all saying we have to look outside this field. Why doesn't Jeb Bush run? Why doesn't Chris Christie run? Why don't we have somebody else who can get out there and fight for this nomination? They're not running because they think Obama's going to win in 2012. And frankly, if one of them got in the present mood, they'd have to pull a Mitt Romney and start flip-flopping to the right.
Just on Bob's point, Karl Rove said recently that this was all an Obama plot by not releasing his birth records, by letting all of this go, because he knows that it discredits the Republican Party. So the smart people in the Republican Party, like Karl Rove, know that, as you say, this is a total loser in a general election.
Jonathan, Bob, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. A lot of great points in there. And just let me say also, Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, not mucked in this mire, right? But the problem is when they get into the primary, they're going to have to go into the same situation. They're going to have to appeal to that same crazy base. My guess is they do the same exact strategy. So it's easy when they're outside of the race. I don't think it's as easy when they get inside of that crazy primary race.